Hi, my name is Daniel Ramsey.
And I'm Aram Goganian.
We're here today with pro cycling coaches to show you the step-by-step process of a professional bike fit.
By using the techniques developed by creator and owner of Bike Fit, Paul Swift, we'll explain how having a proper bike fit can help enhance your riding posture, ease your stride, and improve your overall cycling goals.
Aram, a certified bike fit instructor, will be fitting Chelsea today. Chelsea has come to pro cycling coaches to problem solve some issues she's been having during her training rides. Let's get started.
The warm-up. The warm-up is where I like to take time with the rider and explain to them the CompuTrainer, explain to them some of what's going on throughout the bike fit, and give them a chance to warm up. A lot of times they don't have an opportunity to ride prior to the fit, so this is the chance for them to get the blood flowing in the legs, get comfortable on the bike. Riding a trainer is not the most natural thing in the world, so it's a good idea to give them enough time so that they're comfortable on the bike and get their body warmed up. Here I'm explaining to Chelsea the basics of a CompuTrainer screen and what she's looking at her pedaling stroke, and the basics of the dead spots, right leg, left leg efficiency, and load of each leg, and explain to her watts. I like to also take this time to get my lasers all set up and oriented so that I can get my front view all set, start taking a basic look at what's going on with Chelsea and some of her problems that I see. Before I hear what her issues are and problems that she thinks she's having on the bike, I like to get an idea for myself of what I see that's wrong. I also take this opportunity to go ahead and use my G meter to get some basic measurements. I get her leg extension as I'm doing right here. Typically here you want to be about a 35-degree angle on the deflection, and using a Bike Fit's G meter here, it makes it pretty easy because they got a nice little color coding for me. I'm also taking the measurement here of her arm from her back, which I typically want right around 90 degree, and right about here in her arm extension I want right about a 15 degree. In her back angle for a non-racer I'm looking at about 45-degree angle. In the fitter interview, this is basically where I'm taking the opportunity to talk to Chelsea and see what's bothering her. She tells us that the saddle's bothering her, which is a common complaint among cyclists. She then goes to tell us that the outside of her knees has been bothering her on the drive side, and that her hands go numb after a long ride. The other thing she informs them, is lower back pains. And these are all relatively common issues that most cyclists face nowadays. So now that she's told us these issues, I'm taking a little bit closer look at those key points that she mentioned and seeing how that's in reference to what I noticed during the warm-up session. Go ahead and take a look at her front view to see how her knees are doing, and taking a look at her posture on her handlebars. Back in and do what we call a quick fit. So here we're just going in and seeing that we had little problems. Her saddle looked like it was a little bit low after we got a measurement, and we go in and make small modifications to get things more in the right scope of stuff so that we can get a better idea of what's happening. So she had complained about lower back pain, and pretty evident from her angles and her posture on the bike that her stem was too low. So quickly made a modification and raised her stem. Well, not so quickly, but took her time and raised the stem there. You can see from just that slightly up position helped get her back to closer to about a 45-degree angle. During this part of the fit, I'm looking at her cleat adjustment. So here I'm going to be looking at her front view so that I can determine her stance width that's necessary for the left and the right leg. Also to look at her wedging for her shoes, and looking at forward and after cleat adjustment. So here we're basically going to go ahead and start by measuring where the ball of her foot is in the shoe. And I'm looking at this because I want the axle of the pedal to be just behind the ball of her foot. So here I just make the shoe to make my life a little easier. And then I'm just basically going ahead and explaining to her how these wedges that we're going to use work, and the way it angles the shoe, and what she should notice. Here I'm going ahead and just measuring her forefoot using the BikeFit forefoot measuring device. And here I'm just basically getting a reading to understand a ballpark of how many wedges I'm going to be applying. In this case, I was using 2 wedges on the left side with 1 wedge on the right side. I also have to make a couple adjustments here because I'm going to have to use a different special length screw in order to compensate for the wedges that I'm installing. Go ahead and got everything set up and just putting it back on our bike here. And then we're going to go ahead and look at the front view again and see what's going on and how that made a difference. Here you can see she's pedaling quite a bit better, and her left leg is still having a little bit of movement in it. So here, one of the things I noticed is that her heels were going up quite a bit. So I'm just trying to show her how to engage with the pedal a little bit better throughout her pedal stroke. This will help her pedal a little bit more efficiency, and she'll be able to see this on the CompuTrainer. Now that we've gone ahead and made some cleat adjustments, we're going to return to the saddle. After we change the heights, the stack heights of the cleats here, we're going to have to go back and adjust the saddle. After she started pedaling a little bit more flat with her heels, we had to actually lower her saddle a little bit. So we went ahead and did that change, which also is going to help raise her bar drop. So that she has even less strain on her lower back and hands. Now, she's also letting us know that she's still complaining about her saddle not being comfortable after we've made all these changes. So we're going to go ahead and get a switch it set up here for her so we can do some saddle changes and see if we can find her the right saddle. The beautiful thing with the Switch It here is that we can actually try on many different saddles very quickly. This is one of the best ways to get the right saddle. A lot of times someone will sit on a saddle and within a couple seconds they know if it's the right one or not. There's a lot of really great measuring devices out there to measure sit bone widths and all kinds of tools. I've just experienced over the last 10 years of fitting that this is one of the best, just being able to try them on and do them so quickly. Here we use a lot of SMP saddles, as you can tell. They make a lot of different shapes with a lot of different types of padding with a lot of different types of widths. So we're pretty fortunate here that we have quite a few to choose from. This is actually the saddle that she ended up choosing here, which is the Hell SMP. And it's got not as an extreme curve as some of the other ones do. It's a little bit flatter, and it's actually one of the more padded ones. Now, once she picked out her saddle, we got to go ahead and set it up on the bike. So that's what I'm doing here. This is a great time to let the rider have a chance to take a seat, take a load off, and while you take your time here and put on her saddle. It always seems these things take longer than they should. Now that I got her saddle all back on, it's time to get her repositioned on the bike. Now that she's back on the bike here, we can make some final adjustments to her saddle. Here we're looking at the forward and after, and I've noticed over the years that the SMP saddles tend to go quite a bit forward. And we're really fortunate that SMP has such incredibly long saddle rails that this is actually, we can accommodate this most of the time. So now that we got her set back up, she seems to be pretty happy with the new saddle. So that's great. We fixed another one of her little problems that she had. It's incredible how when you pick the right saddle, your cycling experience can just totally change. Now that we've worked our way from the cleats to the saddle, made any adjustments to the saddle, and gone forward to the handlebars, we had noticed that Chelsea was a little overextended. And you could notice that by the way she was grabbing on the back of the shifters. She wasn't grabbing the actual hoods themselves. So we swapped her out for a shorter stem, and she went ahead and gave that a shot. One of the things you could see is she was still actually holding farther back, and what we did is we rotated the bars up slightly. As you can see here, she's actually moving up a little bit forward, but She seemed to like riding the back of the bars more. Now what I like to do is go ahead and give the rider an overview of what they're looking at here on the CompuTrainer screen. Here basically we're explaining to her how a spin scan works and showing her the dead spots in the pedal stroke, looking at the right leg, left leg efficiency, and basically showing her what we had showed her before with her pedal stroke, but the graphical output of it on the spin scan. Here you can see I'm just basically explaining to her the basic physics behind applying perpendicular force to the crank arm at all times so that you can build rotational force. I like to usually do this just so that the rider understands you're trying to pedal to move the bike forward and how to, the most efficient way of how to do that. So you always want to put perpendicular force, and a CompuTrainer really helps show you your pedaling efficiency and your weak spots. So here we're just going through and showing, looking at her spin and seeing how things affect it. Cleat rotation. This is one of the final steps of a bike fit. And here what we're doing is we're trying to capture her foot while it's still spinning and make sure that her float left to right is equal. Sometimes you're not able to quite accomplish equal float left to right in the conditions where their heel is still hitting the chainstay or hitting the crank arm and you need to rotate it. Typically this is fixed in the cleat adjustment phase, but if it's not, you're going to have to do it in the rotation. Here we're just getting Chelsea's shoe put back in order and ready to go. Then go back to the forward view, the front view, and make sure everything's right in order. Chelsea's a relatively new rider here, and we noticed that her helmet wasn't properly adjusted. So we wanted to go ahead and make sure that that's safe. You can see here I was showing her that you want to make sure that your helmet's far enough down so that something happens and you crash, your face will be protected on impacts there. Here we're just tightening up the back straps, making sure her straps are even. You want to make sure that your ear is nice and even in between the two straps, the front and rear strap coming down. And here you just want to make sure that her back adjustment knob is nice and tight. The Lamars here have a lot of great adjustability that allow you to get the helmet in perfect fit. During the bike fit summary, I go over the basic position of the rider on the bike, as well as just double checking with them to make sure they're not experiencing any pains or discomforts or anything bothering them. Taking a look at all of Chelsea's angles and making sure she's positioned well on the bike. I like to also take this opportunity just to get the G-meter back out and just go over all the measurements, making sure everything's right in the right ballpark. She's about a 35-degree leg extension, 90-degree bend back to the arms, 15-degree to the actual arms, and between a 35 and 45 degree on her back.
Aram has now completed his fit with Chelsea, and she's ready to train safely and ride comfortably for her next event.